The time is precisely 1:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Ramesh Piris and read by Chandima Veerakorn. Headlines. The President of the UAE invites President Ranil Wickremesinghe to World Climate Action Summit. The government to sponsor this year's Poson Festival on a grand scale. The Ayurveda Act to be amended to suit modern requirements. The National Development Committee to evaluate new government projects and programs. The court orders to conduct post-mortem on Dinesh Shaffer's body within 2 days after exhumation. The health experts warn that Sri Lanka is heading to a hyper or major epidemic wreaking havoc. The health experts warn that Sri Lanka is heading to a hyper or major epidemic wreaking havoc. The entrance fees for botanical gardens in the country have been increased with effect from 1st of July. On news overseas, U.S. debt ceiling talks described as productive but no deal yet. In sports news, Brazil statutes lights out to support Vinicius Jr. racism claim. Local stories in detail. President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan of the United Arab Emirates has extended a gracious invitation to President Ranil Wickremesinghe to participate in the World Climate Action Summit, a key event that will inaugurate the Emirates Climate Conference. The World Climate Action Summit Leaders event is scheduled to take place on the 1st and 2nd of December and will coincide with the UAE's 52nd National Day celebrations. The summit will mark the launch of the 28th session of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change at Expo City, Dubai from November 30th to December 12th, which will be presided over by the United Arab Emirates. Meanwhile, President Ranil Wickremesinghe left the island for an official visit to Singapore and Japan. President Wickremesinghe was accompanied by Professor Maitri Wickremesinghe, Senior Advisor to the President on National Security and Chief of Presidential Staff Sagala Ratnayaka, Senior Advisor to the President on Economic Affairs Dr. R.H.S. Samaratunga, the President's Director of International Affairs Dinu Columbage, and the President's Private Secretary Sandra Pereira. The President's visit to Japan, scheduled from the 24th to the 27th of May, will include discussions with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on strengthening bilateral relations and addressing regional and international matters. President Wickremesinghe will also address the Nikkei Forum's 28th Future of Asia Conference in Tokyo on the 25th and 26th of May. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena stated that plans are underway to celebrate this year's Poson Festival on a grand scale under state patronage. Premier Gunawardena further stated that measures have been taken to provide facilities to devotees who are planning to visit the sacred city of Anuradhapura. The Prime Minister stated this when the Parliament convened this morning. He further remarked that there are a number of non-governmental organizations that will collaborate to celebrate the state religious festival. Meanwhile, Minister of Transport and Highways and Minister of Mass Media Dr. Bandula Gunawardena reaffirmed that this year's Poson Festival will be held under state patronage at the weekly government press briefing this morning. Minister Gunawardena further said that he had held discussions with the Secretary of the Ministry of Buddha Sasana, Religious and Cultural Affairs in this regard. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with the local stories, the Cabinet of Ministers has given the go-ahead to set up a National Development Committee to evaluate the progress of new projects and programs implemented by the government. The committee will be chaired by former Deputy Treasury Secretary Dayal Yenage. At its meeting on Monday, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal tabled by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. In a press release, the government noted that past development projects and programs failed to achieve the expected results as they were implemented without proper evaluation. The Colombo Additional Magistrate Mrs. Rajendra Jayasuriya on Monday ordered the 5-member Special Judicial Committee appointed to determine the cause of Jana Shakti Group Director Dinesh Shoffer's death to conduct the post-mortem examination within 2 days after exhumation of his remains. The magistrate ordered to exhume the body of Mr. Shoffer, buried in Borella Cemetery, and conduct the second post-mortem examination at the Gaul Karapitia Teaching Hospital mortuary. The Criminal Investigation Department has made the necessary arrangements to exhume the remains on Thursday, the 25th of May. The court also allowed the 5-member expert committee to conduct the second post-mortem examination at the Gaul Karapitia Hospital mortuary within 2 days after exhumation. The entrance fees for botanical gardens in the country have been increased with effect from the 1st of July. The Gazette notification in this regard has been issued by the Minister of Tourism and Lands. Accordingly, admission fees for adults and children over 12 years of age to enter the main botanical gardens in the country have been increased from 100 to 200 rupees. The admission fee for local children below 12 years and school children has been increased to 30 rupees from 20 rupees. According to the new Gazette, adults over the age of 60 will be allowed to enter botanical gardens for a fee of 50 rupees. Meanwhile, entrance fees for non-resident visitors over 12 years of age have been increased from 2,000 rupees to 3,000 rupees. To conclude the local news, the headlines again. The President of the UAE invites President Ranil Wickremesinghe to World Climate Action Summit. The government to sponsor this year's Poson Festival on a grand scale. The Ayurveda Act to be amended to suit modern requirements. The National Development Committee to evaluate new government projects and programs. The court orders to conduct post-mortem of Dinesh Shoffer's body within 2 days after exhumation. The health experts warn that Sri Lanka is heading to a hyper or major epidemic wreaking havoc. The entrance fees for botanical gardens in the country have been increased with effect from the 1st of July. That ends the local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And on the main news story, the Cabinet of Ministers has granted its approval to the bill prepared by the legal draftsman to amend the Ayurveda Act. Accordingly, the relevant bill to amend the Ayurveda Act will be tabled in Parliament after it is published in the Government Gazette. This was revealed by Cabinet spokesman Minister Bandula Gunawardena, who joined the Cabinet press conference this morning. Meanwhile, the relevant bill prepared by the legal draftsman has been cleared by the Attorney General. On October 31, 2022, the Cabinet approval was given for the proposal to amend the Ayurveda Act No. 31 of 1961 to suit the modern requirements and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. That ends the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
We move on to Watchlight. With the dengue outbreak raging in the country, health experts warn that Sri Lanka is heading to a hyper or major epidemic wreaking havoc. Consultant pediatrician Dr. Lakkumar Fernando of the Negombo Hospital said the epidemic we are experiencing can be the worst since 2017 and 2019. Nevertheless, he noted, if preventive measures are not in place, the current situation may end up in a more devastating state, reaching the number of cases in 2017. Dr. Fernando stressed that it is imperative people take early precautions to clean the surroundings and avoid mosquito bites. The largest dengue outbreak in Sri Lanka was reported in 2017, registering 186,101 cases, while the number of cases reported is the second largest. That ends Watchlight. We move on to the world news, the headlines. U.S. debt ceiling talks described as productive but no deal yet. Week-long ceasefire begins in Sudan amid uncertainty. The first female Arab astronaut to go to space has arrived at the International Space Station. U.S. President Joe Biden and top Republicans have called their latest talks on the debt ceiling productive, but no deal has yet been reached. While acknowledging areas of disagreement, Mr. Biden said default is off the table. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has reiterated that on its debt as early as 1st June. The debt ceiling is a spending limit set by Congress which determines how much money the government can borrow. Failure to raise it beyond the current cap of roughly $31.4 trillion by June could result in the U.S. defaulting on its debt. A week-long ceasefire period agreed by Sudan's warring factions and designed to allow for the delivery of aid has begun after the army conducted heavy airstrikes across the capital Khartoum against its parliamentary rivals. The ceasefire, which was agreed to on Saturday after 5 weeks of fierce battles between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces, was due to take effect at 1945 GMT on Monday. The ceasefire deal includes a monitoring mechanism involving the army and the RSF, as well as representatives from Saudi Arabia and United States, which brokered the agreement to talks in Jeddah. The first female Arab astronaut to go to space has arrived at the International Space Station. Rayana Barnawi is one of 2 Saudis on Axiom Space's second private mission, which took off on the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from the US on Sunday. During her scheduled 10 days in orbit on the ISS, the 34-year-old biomedical scientist plans to carry out stem cell and breast cancer research. She hopes to inspire women from all backgrounds in the Middle East. And back to the world news headlines. The debt ceiling talks described as productive, but no deal yet. Week-long ceasefire begins in Sudan amid uncertainty. The first female Arab astronaut to go to space has arrived at the International Space Station. That ends the world news.
Development news.
The government is seeking to establish 6 new investment zones in the country. State Minister of Investment Promotion Dilum Amunugam said preliminary work to establish the new investment zones is currently underway. The State Minister noted that the new investment zones will be established in the northern, eastern and northwestern provinces with main focus on agriculture industry. That was the development news. And on sports news, Brazil's iconic Christ the Redeemer statue has switched off its lights in a show of support for Real Madrid forward Vinicius Jr. following racial slurs from Valencia fans at the Mestalla Stadium in Spain over the weekend. The lights of the national landmark in Rio de Janeiro, the same state where Vinicius Jr. was born, were switched off at 6 p.m. local time on Monday for an hour to cap a day where the Brazilian government and the world of football united to condemn the racist acts that took place at the Spanish League match on Sunday. That ends sports news.
Go ekakthiyana youth ekata life eke change ekata niyameta setna aswahagena dekapugina habe karana youth ekata niyameta setna friendship ekamenna.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IAM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
And on business news, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara says that according to the agreement signed between Sinopec and the Ministry of Power and Energy, the state-owned Chinese company will be granted a 20-year license to operate 150 fuel stations currently operated by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. In a tweet, the minister said that the agreement also allows in 50 new fuel stations and to invest in Sri Lanka's energy sector. The contract agreement was signed between Sinopec Fuel Oil Lanka Private Limited and its parent company in China and Singapore and the Ministry of Power and Energy beginning of this week at the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo for Sinopec to enter the domestic retail petroleum market. That ends business news.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go එකක් තියන youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු ගින හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Economic news, courtesy of
LONC Finance is taking the power of innovation to the next level, winning 5 golds at the Technovation Awards 2022, leading the digital revolution with cutting-edge interbanking digital payments. LONC Finance claims the overall gold award whilst also claiming an extraordinary victory in digital banking.
And on economic news, the overall rate of inflation as measured by the National Consumer Price Index on year-on-year basis has reduced to 33.6% in April from 49.2% in March 2023. The Department of Census and Statistics said in a statement with respect to April 2022, the reported inflation for the month of April 2023 was mainly due to higher price levels prevailed in both food and non-food groups. The department noted that the food inflation in April also eased to 27.1% from 42.3% in March, while non-food inflation reduced to 39% from 54.9% in March. This is the second month the inflation has remained below 50% since August last year. That ends the economic news.
LONC Finance is taking the power of innovation to the next level, winning 5 golds at the Technovation Awards 2022, leading the digital revolution with cutting-edge interbanking digital payments. LONC Finance claims the overall gold award whilst also claiming an extraordinary victory in digital banking.
Weather Report.
And finally, we take a look at the weather report. The Department of Meteorology predicts showers or thunder showers in several places in the eastern and Uva provinces and in the Polonnaruwa and Mullaithu districts during the evening or at night. Meanwhile, the general public has been requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. That ends the weather report. And to conclude this bulletin of news, the headlines once again. The President of the UAE invites President Ranil Wickremesinghe to World Climate Action Summit. The government to sponsor this year's Poson Festival on a grand scale. The Ayurveda Act to be amended to suit modern requirements. The National Development Committee to evaluate new government projects and programs. The court orders to conduct post-mortem on Dinesh Shaufer's body within 2 days after exhumation. The health experts warn that Sri Lanka is heading to a hyper or major epidemic wreaking havoc. The entrance fees for botanical gardens in the country have been increased with effect from 1st of July. On news overseas, US debt ceiling talks described as productive, but no deal yet. In sports news, Brazil's statues lights out to support Vinicius Jr. racism claim. With that, we conclude this bulletin of news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.